Hey guys, it's me, Ellie, aka Looks in the Crypt, and today we're going to be delving into my Letterboxd. So, unfortunately, I've done some bad things. I've been a bad person in the sense of in the past two Letterboxd videos I've made, I've said I'm going to be doing like, oh, I'll do this monthly, I'm going to do this quarterly. I just keep saying like random bullshit, which none of it works in reality, considering how often we get these. I was like, well, I'm due for a Letterboxd recap, right? It's been a couple months. However, here's like the part that's problematic in all of this is that I'm a guy who watches a lot of movies. I didn't really quite realize this until I went to sit down and do this Letterboxd recap, is that I watch on average 1 to 2 movies a day, and that is legitimately watching a movie. I do not rate or log movies that I put on in the background that I'm not actually giving my full attention. So that's already a help. However, I am a movie guy. I really like movies, so I watch a lot of movies. And so I was due for a Letterboxd recap of what would naturally make sense is picking up from where I left off, so September through November. However, I counted it, and it's like literally at like about 100 movies, and I don't think my phone can handle me talking about this for that long. So we're going to do something where it's kind of like I'm kind of late to the party, but I'm going to do September through October. And then next time you guys see one of these videos, it'll be about a month from now in January. I'll do November through December. So I actually, please hold me to this. I want to make this into a thing I do every 2 months, just so it's actually manageable and watchable. Also, I just want to point something out. So, like last Letterboxd recap, how I said I have watched the worst movie I've ever seen? Well, that still stands true, but in this recap, during the months of September and October, I found the second worst movie I've ever watched. So, I feel pretty proud of myself. I'm on this trend where I just am like building this list up of like how shockingly bad movies can be. So if this sounds like fun to you, get into all the garbage and all the good shit that I've watched in the past couple months, grab a drink, grab a snack, and keep on watching. Alright, so starting off with September, the first thing I watched is Heidi from 2014. It's like a found footage doll movie about like a cursed or haunted doll, yada yada yada. I gave this movie a half star. No, it's not the second worst movie I've ever seen, but it's up there. Okay, my problem with Heidi is that it's a movie that I feel like it was a group of people who got together who didn't understand how difficult it was to make a movie, and throughout the process of making a movie ended up fucking hating it and didn't want to be there. And neither did I. I did not want to be there after a certain point either. It was just really boring and super dull. It just really dragged on. It has an absolute like bad shit like ending in the sense of like not necessarily anything happened. It's just like insane, I guess. I'll say the artistic choices that were made. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Um, and I'll just leave it at that in case you want to check it out. Next up, I have Hell House LLC from 2015. I gave this movie 3 stars. I have a whole like video talking about this movie, so go ahead, click on that, check it out. Spooky World from 1994. I give this 4 stars. It's like about like a 20-minute video that is it's basically like an advertisement for some guy's like haunted house with narration from Kane Hodder. By no means is this like an actual movie. It's just like a fun video basically you put on that has really good vibes. Next up, we have Goth from 2003. I give this movie 3 stars. This is a rewatch for me. I watched this like at like a movie night, and what can I say? I'm just like a sucker for weird 90s-esque like counterculture SOV movies that like involve like a music scene. Goth is about a girl named Goth. How original. And she has it like tattooed on her chest, and she like goth naps a like couple of goth posers and takes them out on like a night of like destruction after saving their lives. Ooh, spooky. And this movie, like literally the entirety of this movie takes place in like a van. And like if you like a movie that has like that certain like twang to it, like in the sense of like it's not very good, but it's really fun though, Goth is for you. Goth is a brain damage movie, and if you're familiar with brain damage films, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to like this like style. And the Shudder original, Who Invited Them, from 2022. I give this movie 2 stars. Honestly, this movie was really fun and funny, And I have trouble with this movie because it resembles a lot of movies I thoroughly enjoy, and I did have a relatively good time watching it. However, it just left like a lot to be desired. I have There's Something Following Me from 2010. I give this movie 3.5 stars. I actually really like this. This is a really cute, like, spooky, like, Halloween vibes. It reminds me of like a Goosebumps episode, kind of. Basically, I went into this with like absolutely no expectations. However, I absolutely loved it. They perfectly capture like the fall atmosphere and just like the general vibe. This is definitely like an at-home, like, passion project movie. And I really commend this one for being a homemade movie that avoided a lot of the like major mistakes that kind of ruined those movies. It didn't overstay its welcome. It didn't have like a bunch of like unnecessary filler, and which is something I see in a lot. They knew how to like properly like layer sound and stuff. Whereas I feel like with a lot of these like lower budget homemade movies, there's literally absolutely like nothing in terms of the sound. It's just like, hey, we filmed this shit. Bye. It was really fun. It's just about like a little girl who is walking home and she feels that something is following her. Next, I have Mockingbird from 2014. I have this movie on DVD and give it 2 stars. I had high hopes because it's from Brian Bertino, the director of like The Strangers, which is literally one of my favorite movies. I have a Strangers tattoo and everything. However, this movie fucking sucked. I just had like no thoughts while watching this like the whole time, and then like the ending hit, I had even less thoughts. It was just like stale. They couldn't do anything to get me to really like care. Next, I have Mad God from, I guess, 2021. I don't think it actually like got released until this year though. I'm just going off the year the Letterboxd has. This is like a Shudder original, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It's just a very like visually striking movie. Stop motion. I'm a fucking sucker for it. Just like a movie, turn your brain off and have it play. It's a really good background movie. Okay, so next we have Barbarian from 2022. I give this movie 3 stars. Once I was able to watch it at home, once I hit HBO Max, I actually ended up enjoying this movie quite a bit more. Funny story, 2 things. I fucking don't like people, and I'm fucking broke all the time. So I wanted to, normally me and my partner, we go to the movie theater on Tuesday nights when it's cheap. It's only like $5 a ticket. And I work a little bit later sometimes throughout the week. So we hit like the last showing. Instead, usually the last showing doesn't really have people there. You'll just have like a couple people in your theater. If not, we're totally by ourselves. So we ended up going to the theater to go see this with some friends, and we did like on like a weekend, I think. And the thing is that like, bruh, there's fucking people there. That shit fucking already pissed me off. And then like, that's something you guys will come to learn about me, is I'm a testy little bitch. Like anything will, it just irritates me. So, because people just don't know how to fucking act in the theater. And there's already a guy sitting next to me who was on his phone reading reviews for Barbarian, and I don't know why. Instead of watching the movie, he was just sitting there on his phone reading reviews, and that was just like absolutely pissing me off and made me like fester with hate. And like I couldn't, like, I feel like it was genuinely distracting that was happening, because like, you know, bright phone light in a theater, I feel like that knocked my experience down by a few points. But once I was able to watch it at home on HBO Max, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit more. And however, some of my opinions that I had the first time still stand, which is that I feel like I really did appreciate how you were under the impression this was a completely different movie based on the trailer. I kind of hated when like a trailer gives away the whole thing. Another thing about this movie is that I just feel like the ending was really rushed. I feel like this is one of very few movies I feel like could benefit from perhaps being longer. Needless to say, I absolutely love Bill Skarsgård. I just love him in every fucking movie. And same thing with like Justin Long. And Justin Long is just so good at being like a fucking douche. Like every movie. Like I just recently watched Tusk. Fucking hate that guy in that movie, but I love him. You know what I mean? Yeah, it just like left a lot to be desired in the final act, which is an opinion that I still feel that I felt on the first go. But however, it's come to be a movie that I quite enjoy. So we have Idle Hands from 1999. I give this 4 stars. I fucking love this movie. This movie rules. It's just like the perfect mesh of a stoner comedy and a horror movie, and it takes place on Halloween. Next we have a Sandman, or a Sandman. I don't know. I honestly had no idea how to say the title of this movie until I watched it. From 2006, I gave it 2.5 stars. I was expecting a lot more from this movie. So this movie is really ambitious in the sense that it is both a documentary on extreme horror and like the psychology behind it. However, there's fictional elements. We literally have like Fred Vogel and Bill Z Bub and like some kind of like horror psychologist woman being like interviewed. So that aspect's real. However, like there's like the additional fictional element where they're, it's a mockumentary about extreme horror. However, there's one guy who makes these extreme films called Sandman, but they are a little bit too real. And it starts to pose the question if he is just some like literal psycho killing people, or if he is just really deep into the extreme horror. How is that to be differentiated? I kind of wish it was either one or the other, like a documentary about extreme horror, or if it was a movie about this fictional Sandman guy. And I'll acknowledge this, I am like a Fred Vogel, August Underground fangirl, so I really liked his segments in the movies. However, it was hard for me to really like feel that interest in some of the other segments. I kind of wish like maybe we had like a wider or a bigger group who were being interviewed for, I guess, like the actual real documentary aspect. I honestly did not really care for the fictional element. I feel like that's kind of where this movie went off the rails a little bit and where it kind of got lost, because I feel like the documentary part is really great and poses a lot of really good questions about our love for horror, especially underground and extreme horror at that, and if it's a fetish or not, which is like something I always like joke about in terms of like extreme horror, because like at times it gets to a point where just people openly admitting that they watch porn for a hobby, but they're not recognizing it as being porn. It just really goes into like, why do we enjoy seeing these things on screen? Where do the lines of entertainment and something deeper get blurred? And this movie just has a lot of really great commentary on paraphilia and voyeurism, which I absolutely loved getting into. However, I just, again, once we got into like the fictional aspect of the Sandman, it just gets kind of like lost, and it never really goes there, if you know what I mean. It never really pushes the limit or the boundary, which I feel like would have been great. I know the point was to be kind of ambiguous, but I don't think maybe being ambiguous was the right choice. So next up we have is Speak No Evil from 2022. This one's been pretty actually well liked. I really did not give a fuck. I did not like this movie. I know, like, so basically it follows like a couple who gets invited to go on vacation and stay at another couple's house that they don't actually know, and basically just tensions rise just because so many things just keep happening, like boundaries just keep getting crossed, they're being pushed to their limits and stuff like that. They're being made uncomfortable by how the other couple lives their life and what they do. Maybe I'm just not the right person for this movie, because it's just about generally politeness and what people do in the name of politeness, whether or not it's necessarily safe, just because they don't want to be rude to another person. However, I'm very much a fuck politeness kind of person. I am fully aware that I am totally a little bitch and am very rude at times, and I'm fully aware of my behavior. I don't believe in politeness whatsoever, so maybe that's like the problem here as to why it didn't land for me. However, I feel like there's more that goes into it than just a personal issue, because you see these like very clear like boundaries and just weird shit happening. They're just like, oh well, we can't leave, we can't do anything because it's rude. However, it gets to the point where it's like, with everything that happens with the increasingly weirder and weirder, and how I guess it ends, and because obviously it's not gonna end well for them, it's impossible for you to care that this is happening to these characters, at least for me, because they allow this to happen because they're fucking stupid. And that's something that even comes up at the end. They ask them, why are you doing this to us? And they're like, well, because you left me, which is 100% facts. And I feel like I try to do this thing like how like that's supposed to be like the thing that you're like, oh, that burns, like in The Strangers when they say because you're home. However, it doesn't have that effect whatsoever. And in addition to me not really giving a shit, this is a movie that's like left open-ended and nihilistic intentionally, which is something I don't have beef with. I often actually quite enjoyed that. However, this is a movie that had some elements that absolutely need to be explained, because they made no fucking sense in the end of it. And I don't really want to say too much because this is a pretty well-liked movie, so I don't want to spoil it. So if you want to have a one-on-one conversation about what I felt like didn't make any sense that needed to be explained, my DMs are open. I just couldn't like be sold on like any aspect of this movie. I have Clown House from 1989. I give this movie 1 star. It's directed by Victor Salva, which he is a director who he directed Jeepers Creepers, which is a fucking great movie. I love that movie, and I still watch that movie because I don't think that his poor actions should negatively impact all the work that everybody in that movie, cast and crew, had contributed, since I don't think their work should be diminished because of what somebody else did when they worked their asses off to make a great movie. You know what I mean? However, Clown House is so Victor Salva. He was a pedophile who was convicted for molesting a child on set of actually this movie, unfortunately, which is pretty terrible. And the thing is, here's the difference between why I love Jeepers Creepers and why I hate Clown House. So, Clown House is a movie about these young boys being terrorized by a clown when they're home alone. The key difference between these two movies here is that you see the director's pedophilic desires actually come through the camera very strongly, and it makes it feel pretty bad to watch. So, with that, like, basically, like, I could have really liked this story and vibe. However, like, especially because, like, there's, like, evil clowns, like, clowning around outside and stuff, which is pretty cool. However, it's really hard to get past because this movie certainly suffered due to its, like, horrifying subtext, because the entire, like, movie was just so weird. Like, you got, like, pedophilic shots of, like, you know, zoom ins on little boys running around in their underwear and stuff like that. So I just really couldn't do it, and I don't recommend you do either. The difference between Clown House and Jeepers Creepers is that the pedophilia doesn't shine through, if that makes sense. So I feel like that's a movie I can still appreciate. Oh my god, The Midnight Hour from 1985. I gave this movie 3.5 stars. This made-for-TV movie made me want to cry my ass off, but I did not, and I'm really proud of myself for not doing that, because I'd be pissed if this movie of all movies would be the one to make me cry. I really like this movie. This movie's awesome. I highly recommend for every Halloween, watch this shit. I have his Hellfest from 2018. I give this movie 3 stars. Another one from my Halloween favorites video. Yeah, this movie just rules. Basically, like, Hellfest is awesome just because it just does a really good job of creating the vibe, and they create this whole set so well where Hellfest is a place that you wish you could go to for Halloween, which is absolutely great. I really recommend this one. Yet another rewatch I have is Haunt from 2019. I give this movie 2.5 stars. It's really weird because the first time I had watched this movie, I feel like I really enjoyed it. But I feel like I also blocked out all the shit I hated about it because it was a surprise to me when I rewatched it. This one, I like it quite a bit, but on the rewatch, it's just, like, really dumb. And I ended up, like, rooting for the haunters to kill these, like, people because they're so fucking annoying, but not even, like, an entertaining way. Like, we spend too much time with them for it to really hit or be satisfying. There are some things that I feel like enough people have seen this movie where I can spoil it, and if you haven't, just skip ahead. So, like, the plot twist is that they're actually, like, sick and twisted freaks that listen to, like, new metal. That was fucking stupid. Next I have is Jeepers Creepers from 2001, yet another rewatch. I give this movie 3.5 stars. I love this movie, and I'm also, like, a Justin Long fangirl, so enough said. However, there's nothing really I can say to this movie that can really add to the conversation. I just really love, like, that, like, 2000s, like, goodness, you know what I mean? That's just my vibe. Next is yet another rewatch, one of my favorite SOV trasher pieces, which is The Abomination from 1986. I give this movie 4 stars. I have a full review on this movie. Please absolutely watch this because I feel like absolutely nobody fucking watched my review on this movie, so if you did, I would really appreciate it. Next I have is 2LDK from 2003. I give this movie 4 stars. This movie's awesome. It's all on YouTube. I actually ended up buying the Blu-ray after watching it because I enjoyed it so much. I recommend this to everybody who has ever had a roommate because it really sums up the experience pretty well. And basically it's about these two girls who are roommates, and they both apply for, or they both, like, audition for the same, like, acting role, the same gig. and they basically end up just growing increasingly more irritated with one another, to the point of it just being like this like absolutely like comical, like schlocky, super gory like battle like in their apartment. Basically the kind of thing where if that sounds awesome to you, watch it. If that does not sound awesome to you, don't bother. Like, it definitely takes a certain kind of person, and also it's like super short. I want to say this movie's like maybe like an hour long or so. Next up is Popcorn from 1991. I give this movie 4.5 stars. Another one of my Halloween picks. I'm not gonna say shit about this movie. Just go fucking watch it. Just go fucking watch it. Because I have is Satan's Little Helper from 2004. I give this movie 3.5 stars. Yeah, another rewatch. I love this movie. I don't know what it is. This shit just never fails to make me laugh my ass off. And I feel like that says a lot. So if you haven't watched this movie, you should. So like 90s, early 2000s, like cheesy goodness. And this is a favorite that I actually weirdly haven't talked about, which I think it's kind of funny because I feel like in real life, I talk about this movie quite a bit, and that is Creep from 2014. I gave 4 stars. I love this movie, and the thing is, anytime I watch a movie in the same vein, I just wish I was watching Creep instead. This movie is just so good, and it's really like successful as being an uncomfortable comedy as it is being a unsettling horror movie. The thing that really grabs me about this movie is that Joseph reminds me of somebody that they actually know. You know what I mean? So, which is just what makes this one work so well. It just chef's kiss. I don't know what it is, just weird guy horror really works.
1 hour later.
I took a break because I filmed this whole video, and then like after Creep, my microphone stopped working, I guess, and I still have like fucking a fuck ton of movies left. So we're refilming, and I'm pretty pissed off about it because, like, as you guys know, my setup's pretty janky. I have a fucking iPhone with a connector to my microphone, so things just aren't really that great. I have to fucking set up like a mirror to fucking know if I'm filming and all this bullshit. And yeah, then my microphone fucking stopped working, and there's no way for me to know. So I'm hoping if I have my headphones in plugged into my mic, I'll be able to know if it stops picking it up. But I don't know if it actually will, since I don't know if that will be something that I will be able to hear, or if it's something that happens on the phone. I don't fucking know. Anyway, so I'm refilming a bunch of shit. Yay. After our intermission, next we have A Smile from 2022. I give this movie 3 stars. To be honest, I saw this in the theaters in a pretty... It wasn't actually busy, but like busy for what I'm used to theater. And people are being really fucking annoying and talking very, very loudly. Like to the point where it's not that they're talking to like the person next to them loudly, like they're like yelling at the screen and shit. That shit pisses me off and it's super fucking annoying. So I feel like what I have to say about this movie isn't necessarily fair because I feel like my time was partially ruined by that. I'm interested in watching it again since I know it is on Paramount Plus. Next I have is Eraserhead from 1977. Enough said, this is a 5-star movie. I was really stoked because our cute little art house theater here, but they're doing like a run of every David Lynch movie in addition to showing Twin Peaks. I was lucky enough to be able to go see Eraserhead. It's one of my favorite movies. I fucking love this movie, and there's not really much I can say to add to the conversation other than this movie is very successfully bizarre, artsy, unsettling, and hilarious. And all I have to really say about this is that I guess details how impressive it is that somehow every time I watch this movie, I feel like I've watched it with a fresh set of eyes, and that takes a lot to make somebody feel. I was Deadstream for 2022. I give this movie 2.5 stars. This was like a Shudder original that everybody was like shitting their pants over, and for me, it was okay. I just feel like my main beef with it, so it's a horror comedy, right? And I feel like the horror elements of this one were actually pretty good despite being a horror comedy, which I feel like is really hard to do. I feel like often the comedy is where the emphasis is on. However, my problem with it is that I feel like it's too difficult for literally one character to carry an entire movie. And I feel like it just wasn't a strong enough character to do that. In addition to that, everybody and their mom was comparing this movie to Evil Dead, and I feel like that's an extremely generous comparison. And I can see why people would say that, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's an accurate assessment either. Next we have is The Video Dead from 1987. I give this movie 4 stars. I fucking love The Video Dead. This is just a really fun story about like zombies coming out of the TV. It's like a fucking like haunted television set, and has really awesome effects and quite literally the most fucking insane dialogue ever. I highly recommend. My favorite part about this movie is that we have like a main character who's like high off his ass like the duration of like the entire movie. He invented new emotions. That's all I gotta say. So this movie's a really fun one. It's super hilarious and just like a really good time. A great movie night movie in my opinion. So something we've gotten into a lot on this channel is that I am a weird bitch. However, something that we have not gotten into that I feel is adjacent to that is that I do really like the depressing, disturbing, like dark cinema that's not necessarily horror. Definitely a thing I really, really enjoy. Like that whole like subcategory of just like depressing dramas or horror adjacent things is my thing. It's my bread and butter. I really fucking love it. And that brings us to one of my new favorites is Zero Day from 2002. I give this movie 5 stars. It's a found footage film that is basically as close as we'll ever get to the Basement Tapes. And if you don't know, the Basement Tapes are basically the Columbine shooters leading up to the massacre. They're filming themselves and their plans to shoot up their school, which is absolutely horrifying and something that we will never be able to see. However, that's probably for good reason after seeing this. This is one of the most like effective, like jarring, horrifying, and however, meanwhile, still extremely human movies, which makes it so good. This is like honestly one of the best found footage movies I've ever seen, like in general. This movie is so raw and it makes you feel an array of emotions to the point where it's not okay. Like you're not okay with the emotions making you feel towards these characters and what's going on, and it is extremely boundary pushing and just fucking amazing and powerful. Very realistic and great movie that you won't be able to stop thinking about after you see it. And all I have to say is like after like, not to be like fucking edgelord make fucking edgy pants, but as like a connoisseur of like depressing and disturbing cinema or like dark cinema in general, this has been one of the most difficult watches I've experienced. I hate to say it, but they really did a great job at replicating of what we may never actually see. And then a lot of these scenes were definitely shot with a vision and intention in mind to make you really feel something and capture something. And with that being said, like this movie's great. And I feel like if you're a fan of more than just horror, like disturbing, depressing movies, or just want to explore further into the found footage genre outside of horror, since I feel like found footage is often just heavily associated with horror, which makes perfect sense considering how much of the found footage genre is horror. However, I feel like, you know, there's so much more to it than that. Like, for example, Project X is a fucking great found footage movie, but it gets really overlooked because it's a comedy. Whereas with this is just like a depressing, I guess, replica drama, so to speak. And this is one of the best if not the best found footage movie I've ever seen. Next is Haunters, The Art of the Scare from 2017. This is a movie I watch every year. I fucking love this movie. This is a really great Halloween chill vibes getting you into the season documentary. I mentioned this in my Halloween video as well. This is a rewatch for me. And man, I just fucking love this movie. It's just something that just feels so good. So it's a documentary about people who run haunts, who are scare actors, and all that good stuff, everything in between there. And as somebody who likes to go to these things, it's really cool to see the people who create this stuff and have like a true passion for what they call the art of the scare. I was Over the Garden Wall from 2014. I give this 3.5 stars. This is technically a series, but like I watched it all in one sitting like it was a movie. Every year I get recommended this, and this year particularly one of my coworkers was like, "What? You're a Halloween hoe and you haven't seen this?" I was like, okay. And I loved it. It was just super cute and charming. Really good vibes. It just has that like special like fairy tale mysticism. Next we have is American Guinea Pig, The Song of Solomon, which is, I believe, the second entry into the American Guinea Pig series from Honors Films / Stephen Biro. 2017, I give this 3 stars. One thing that's really cool about this is that I feel like a lot of extreme films tend to follow the same kind of premise, which is just people being tortured, more or less. However, this is an exorcism film, which is really cool to see something like that. And I feel like this movie could have definitely benefited from being shorter for sure. I feel like the story drags, and then the acting also can't carry the runtime, which is the only caveat to having like a different kind of plot that's not just like torture, is that you need those areas to be a bit improved to really have the viewer invested the entire time. Where the effects are absolutely fucking awesome, and I also love how funny this movie is at times. The effects are done by, of course, Marcus Cook and Jesse Seitz, who are absolutely like fucking amazing at practical effects. They're like running the game when it comes to extreme horror, and it looks so fucking good. And this movie's hilarious too. However, I feel like a lot of people like, just reading other reviews, I feel like people didn't like realize it was supposed to be funny. Or at least that's my interpretation. I feel like this movie was intentionally supposed to be hilarious, but I feel like a lot of people missed that. And personally, I actually really quite enjoyed those parts. It's The Sacrament. I don't know why I did this, but I didn't write anything. I just rated it. This movie is quite good though. It follows like some like Vice reporters like going to go like investigate like a cult basically. I give it 3 stars. I've seen this movie plenty of times, but however, I feel like it's like one of those movies that doesn't really stick with me, but it's like a non-offensive, pretty decent movie that I could just put on. Next here I have is The Evil Within, which we'll take a drink to this movie. How about that? So, The Evil Within. This is a fucking weird movie. It's from 2017. I give this 3.5 stars. The thing about this movie, it's so fucking bizarre. I would say its backstory is more interesting than the movie itself. Okay, it's like one of those things where I don't even know where to start with this. It's like in the same sense of like the Black Gondola, where like I feel like no rating is necessarily very appropriate for this movie, but I must kind of thing. The Evil Within, first off, stars Michael Berryman, which is wild. Second of all, so backstory. Okay, so there is this man who directed it, made this movie, fully funded it, who is, I believe he was like addicted to methamphetamines, and he happened to be a rich guy who did meth, essentially. And so with that, there's a lot to unpack here when getting into this. So, rich guy on meth decides he wants to make a movie. This movie takes several years longer than it reasonably should have to make because he was like losing his money, needed to get back, etc. He just kind of blowing his money on something. Then he would also decide that other ventures were more important than finishing the movie. And from my understanding, Michael Berryman and then the other main actor, like Laurie, the main actor, were the only people who stuck through the whole movie, which is pretty wild because it took several years to make. And like one of the ventures we paused the movie for was because he wanted to like make like a animatronic octopus that played the drums. However, the most heartbreaking part of this is that this movie that was like his like dream to make, that he was so passionate about, he had actually passed before the movie was completed. So he spent all this time and money and had never seen the end product. The best way I can describe this movie is that The Room meets like a meth-induced fever dream. For me, maybe it's because I'm like a weird bitch who has like a soft spot for stuff, but excuse me. This movie weirdly has a lot of character for how fucking shitty it is. This is like one of those movies I feel like I can't necessarily recommend to anybody, but watch it. Alright, here's another movie that we have to drink to. And that is The Grim Cuddy from 2022. That fucking stupid piece of shit Hulu original. I give this movie 1.5 stars, but you must hear me out here. So the thing is, did the movies fucking suck? Yes, it did. It had some of the worst CGI I've ever fucking seen. However, this movie had me laughing my ass off the entire fucking movie. So it does have some merit because at least it was entertaining. I had a good time while watching it. And the thing about this is, to contextualize what the experience of watching The Grim Cuddy is like is, you know Darman, that guy from YouTube? Yeah, okay, so imagine if Darman made a movie about an internet creepypasta, like, mass hysteria thing with, like, the worst CGI you've ever fucking seen. And then there you go, you got the Grim Cuddy. The other thing about the Grim Cuddy is too is that like there's this like younger brother character that we get introduced to, and like the parents like sees his computer and like look at his like search history, and I have this written down here. He looked up fat people porn, necrophilia, Dylan Klebold, and Eric Harris, in addition to giving out his number on the darknet. Just saying, they actually do call it the darknet. All I have to say is this little brother character, Cameron, he really just be like me for real, for real. Holy shit, okay, so I have a really weird one. Next is Hell House from 2001, not to be confused with Hell House LLC. I give this movie 4 stars. It's a documentary about a church who runs a haunt, and their goal by the end of it is to convert you to Christianity, and in the weirdest way possible. So I feel like a lot of us seek out horror and like other cheap scares, like going to a haunt as like a form of some kind of escapism. However, like escapism, like to forget like the true horrors of the world. However, Hell House, they have a different approach. They want to fucking throw rape, suicide, mass shootings, and more, like such as like there's like an AIDS patient like dying in like the hospital and stuff like that. That is the experience you get walking through Hell House, with the hopes that you will convert to Christianity afterward, which is super fucking weird. The thing I really love about this documentary is that the documentarians don't do any coaxing or nudging in this. They just truly let the absurdity that is Hell House unfold on the screen in its own like uncomfortable, upsetting, and hilarious way. It just unfolds, and it presents itself in the most unapologetic way, and it just really, like, it's so absurd. It feels like satire at times, yet you gain one depression point every time you're reminded of the fact that this is a documentary. So if you like weird shit like this, where it's just like it's one of those things where it's just like life is stranger than fiction, I highly recommend watching this. Next I have is If Anything Happens, I Love You, which is a short film. It's already less than 10 minutes. I gave 2.5 stars, from 2020. It's animated. I really like the idea and the concept and the premise of this, and the animation itself is cool. However, they have like some fucking corny ass music playing in it that completely took me out of it and couldn't get me like invested at all, which kind of sucks because I feel like it could have been pretty good otherwise. But there's just, I don't know, it was a really strange artistic choice that I did not enjoy. Okay guys, so we're going to talk about Halloween Ends, and like the thing about Halloween Ends is that it's like not funny. Like, it's not like a fucking good movie by any means. It literally just fucking sucks. I gave Halloween Ends 1 star. I'm really glad that I watched it at home and not in the theaters, because I try to see every horror movie I can in the theaters. I literally stayed up till like 4 a.m. before I drove to Seattle watching this, and like it's one of those things where I'm like, man, like I don't know, like if that was really worth my time. And like the thing is that I fucking hated Halloween Kills. However, in retrospect, like now that I've seen Halloween Ends, I feel like that was definitely like a decent movie. Yeah, man, like Halloween Ends just like fucking sucks, dude. Like, I don't know, like I feel like people who like are defending this movie incessantly, like they're just trying to be controversial, basically, in the sense that like I feel like this is like an objectively like bad movie, in the sense that the only positive thing I really have to say about it is that it was filmed in HD, which isn't saying like a whole lot. It just like, it's really bad, and what constitutes as like you know, the end isn't very good. Of course Michael Myers dies, but he dies in a way where it's like, if we could have done this the whole time, why didn't we? And like he survived all this other shit, but then Laurie Strode just slits his throat and then he's fine, which makes no fucking sense. And yeah, this movie just fucking sucked. And not to mention, I'm giving hella spoilers right now. I don't give a fuck. I'm Buzz. Let's fucking go. So like the thing about Halloween Ends, so we have like this like weird like situationship between like Corey and Michael. If you haven't seen this, you're not gonna know dick about what I'm talking about. But like, so basically like Corey's like Michael's like apprentice after Michael's been like living in like the fucking sewers for years, just not killing, I guess, or he has been, and he passes the evil on to Corey for like no goddamn reason. And like they're doing some like buddy cop shit and like I just don't get it, and like it's just so fucking bad, and like I feel like people are being like, oh well they did something different, or like comparing to Halloween 3. I'm like, well, Halloween 3 fucking rips. Second of all, sometimes different isn't good, and like it's not to mention it just doesn't really like make any goddamn sense. So yeah, Halloween Ends, that's one of the worst movies I've seen all year, or at least in terms of releases that happened this year, this is probably the worst one. Next, I have is Spirit Halloween, the movie from 2022. I give this movie 2 stars. It's super duper cute and charming. Basically, it is the premise is what my dream was as a kid, which was to be able to sneak into Spirit Halloween at night and stay the night there. However, these kids do that, and the animatronics come to life, and it's super spooky. And it stars one of my favorite animatronics, being Mr. Dark. It should come to no surprise as I have little Skelly Bones here and Crouchy here that I am a Spirit Halloween hoe. And like I even have like the Spirit Halloween signs from when they're closing and stuff like that in my apartment. So I love Spirit Halloween. If you're like a fan of Spirit Halloween, definitely watch this. I feel like this probably won't have that much merit if you're not like a fucking nerd about this shit. My only thing about it though is that it was rated like PG-13, but I have no idea what got it that PG-13 rating, considering nothing PG-13 happens in it. It's actually very PG, if anything. And just to contextualize, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is a PG-13 movie and people die in it, and we literally get swearing. So it was really weird that this has a PG-13 rating. I was hoping more of like a Stranger Things vibe than like a literal like actual like super duper little kid thing, but I still had fun with it regardless. And funny I mentioned Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The next thing I have is Killer Clowns from Outer Space from 1988. I give this movie 5 stars, and to me, I love this movie. This is like a fucking cult classic on mainstream, which is super cool. I love this shit. I've been watching this shit since I was a kid. My parents would have me watch it all the time. It's like one of my favorites growing up. I have a full review of this. I'll have linked or listed or fucking whatever. Check it out. Next I have is Trick or Treat from 1986. I gave this movie 5 stars. I love this movie. I am just like a hoe for the rock and roll horror movies. And it has Ozzy, has Gene Simmons. We have fake rock stars. It's so fucking dope. And again, full review of this movie up on my channel. Check it out. Then next here I have Rocktober Blood from 1984. I give this 4 stars. Again, rock and roll horror movie. What else can you fucking ask for? Full video, actually a double feature with Trick or Treat on my channel. Now I have VHS 99 from this year. I gave it 2 stars. Here's my problem. Here's my fucking beef here. Is that for me, VHS 1 and 2, especially VHS 1, when VHS 1 came out, that was like a breath of fresh air to the horror genre. It was super edgy and like different, and it was doing something new that we haven't quite seen before, especially in terms of like an anthology. It really like went there, and it was kind of like the it girl of like the horror at the moment. However, like the same with VHS 2. VHS 2 is incredible. Probably has one of my favorite stories of the whole series. However, I want VHS movies to be VHS movies again, as opposed to having like each one is like themed. Like we have VHS Viral, which pertains to like the internet, VHS 94, which is of course a year, and now we have VHS 99, which is also, centered around 1999, and the next we're getting 85. I know I am a practical effects purist, but if you want to understand why CGI should never occur, especially in found footage movies, this is your prime example of that, just because it takes you completely out of the realism and like our setup that we work so hard to create, right? And completely takes you out of the story. And again, like my problem with this movie is that I just feel like each story started out pretty strong in my opinion, and then did some like totally out of pocket like twist that ruined it, along with CGI, with the exception of the very last story, which funny enough had the dude from Deadstream, which I thought was great. That story like blew like everything else out of the water. That was my most enjoyed by far. And needless to say, if you've seen it, I have never seen a found footage story or just like a horror movie like that in general before, so that was super new and like exciting to see. So I have his basic how-to Halloween makeups from 2007. I give this 3 stars. This isn't really like a movie, just literally like a tutorial on like on how to do like classic Halloween makeup. You see people like do werewolves, devils, ghosts, etc. And super fun and cute. It has a very, it says it's 2007, but has a very dated feel, like it's from the 90s kind of thing. And I really like it. I feel like it's a really good like vibe to like just kind of put on like in the background while you're doing like other stuff when you're like not necessarily actually trying to watch something but want to have something on. Next I have is The Great Satan from 2018. I give this 3 stars. This one's particularly interesting to me just because I don't think I've ever came across a mixtape on like an actual streaming platform before. This mixtape is from Everything Is Terrible, and they're basically like the VHS archivist kind of vibe where they archive weird VHS tapes that they encounter and, you know, make something out of it or upload them on their own. And from my understanding, it like they went through like literally over like 2,000 VHS tapes to create this mixtape that actually has some kind of like storyline pertaining to Satan. Personally, I couldn't really like pick up on that because it was just like too much for like how little brain cells I have, but I did enjoy it. Like if you like mixtapes, this is a pretty good one. Next I have is The Corpse of Anna Fritz from 2015. I gave this movie 3.5 stars, and this is a movie where I feel like the less you know, ultimately the better going into it. I really liked it actually. However, I do have my qualms, so this is honestly one of the more uncomfortable, disturbing, and grueling movies I've watched in quite a while. We have tensions like constantly rising, keeping you at the edge of your seat. And the first 20 minutes are quite controversial. We are getting pretty like rough depictions that are like relentless of necrophilia on screen, not implied, straight up shown to you. And to be honest, our whole middle section is so tense. However, once we are waiting to get what we've been waiting for this whole goddamn movie, it just kind of falls flat, which is really unfortunate. Yet it does certainly pack a punch in a short runtime. It's only like barely like over an hour long. And weirdly to say, somehow despite being a movie about necrophilia, it pulled it off quite tastefully and non-exploitatively. And if you're okay with topics of necrophilia and things like that, I highly recommend this movie if you're okay with consuming that kind of media. Next I have is Terrifier 2, which is really interesting for me. So I am not a fan of the first Terrifier movie. I have rewatched it since, but I'm just not the biggest fan. I didn't really think it was that great and thought it was kind of overhyped. I think it's kind of like an ugly movie, if I'm being honest, in terms of shots and color correction and stuff like that. However, Terrifier 2, oh damn. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the first Terrifier, and I saw they're coming out with Terrifier 2, and that runtime genuinely scared me of being 2.5 hours long for like a gore movie. That seems awful. However, I kind of came to the realization that I would probably never see a movie like this again in the real cinema, probably ever. So I needed to, of course. And the thing is that I which I'm really glad I did, because my thing is that Art the Clown, honestly, he fucking stole my heart and completely won me over in this like movie. He is seriously like a new horror icon that I did not see coming whatsoever. And granted, he was in like a lot of the scenes. Yes, he's like the dude. However, every scene he was not in, I was begging for more art. And we do have like a pretty fair amount of character development with characters that we don't hate. They aren't insufferable. However, I am still asking for more art. So my main complaint with this movie, though, however, still stands to what I originally initially thought, was that it's just fucking too long. Time is filled in like a super strange way, in the sense that I wasn't really anticipating this. Like, we get all these like plot points that are brought up that they act like are important, and they spend all this time like creating the exposition for them, for it to never come up again or be explored or explained again. So it's kind of pointless to bring up to begin with. And in addition to that, I've never quite seen something so strange like this, but I've never seen a movie have like an overuse of B-roll. I feel like every like scene had like a lot of B-roll following it, and when you think about those like 30-45 minute long sequences, that adds up quite a bit, and then contributes to the run. Honestly, I'm really glad I went to go see this in theaters nonetheless, just because I've never seen a movie like this in fucking theaters. I probably never will. And again, like I said, Art the Clown, that motherfucker totally won me over, and I love him. Like, I'm a fan. Like, I saw that sunglasses scene and was like, do I need a tattoo for that? This movie is just so absurd and like inventive and has hilarious kills that go full camp. I don't really know how people are really disturbed by this, because I feel like we have like humor going throughout the whole thing. Of course, the gore is a super high point because we're using practical effects, and like if you're like wondering why we should be using practical effects, fucking watch Terrifier 2. This, like, if you weren't sold on them, you'll be sold on them after this. Next I have is The Gateway Meat, which is a very convoluted movie. It's like a 2008. I'm pretty sure it's super duper low budget. I gave it 2 stars just for partially for passion. I hate to talk shit because it is super low budget, like a homemade movie, but it fucking sucks. So like the thing is, it's like the plot follows like these like Satanists or whatever, and like one of the Satanists like father dies, who is like trying to like access this like portal to hell, and then they follow up by trying to access it themselves or something, and he has like murder his way through to access the portal while his like fucking like 5-year-old daughter like watches. And the thing is that this has like a super duper convoluted, like complicated plot that's half thought out that they can't accomplish. Simply, I feel like as somebody who watches a lot of movies and a lot of really low budget like passion projects, which I love passion projects, but my main thing is that you need to acknowledge where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And I feel like a lot of the time with these movies is that they're too ambitious and they try to do too much for what their budget is. And like, for example, poor acting and a complicated plot is extremely limiting for these movies, and that's what we have here. However, like, definitely though, the star of the show here is the practical effects. I feel like we should have maybe done something that's a bit more heavy on that, got more of that, and it would have been a bit better. It just like, I don't know. It would just kind of take it or leave it. Like, I probably could have gone without seeing that movie. The fun part about how the fact that I lost an hour of my life because I wasn't picking up audio is I'm a lot more buzzed than I would be normally be. So here's to another. And we are starting out this next beer with Bad Candy from 2020. I give this movie 1.5 stars. This movie sucks. So the best part about it is it stars Corey Taylor. This is like a Halloween anthology movie. I really wanted to be like Trick or Treat, or like the sequel, the long-awaited sequel to Trick or Treat. However, it isn't. It's real. And the wraparound story has Corey Taylor, who is literally like the only competent actor in this entire movie. And I'm kind of questioning if they use like their entire budget on getting Corey Taylor, or if he's like a friend. I don't really know. It's kind of like unbeknownst to me how this really happened. But yeah, it's a Halloween anthology movie. We even have like the spirit of Halloween, kind of like Sam, but it's this clown called Bad Candy that is quite literally like a guy wearing a spirit Halloween clown costume, which is pretty fucking rough. And with that, another thing that we get is that we have both the what I consider a cardinal sin, which is the mixture of CGI and practical effects. Because the thing is, when you see practical effects next to CGI, it emphasizes, especially when it's bad CGI. This is some of the worst CGI I've seen in some time. It's a situation where, okay, with the practical effects next to CGI, like, you don't know how bad it was until you saw how good it could be. And that's like the situation, because like bad CGI is fucking bad. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, maybe I wouldn't realize how bad it would be if it weren't for being able to see the potential that's there, which I feel like is one of the worst things you can do. So yeah, I really don't recommend this movie. Just watch Trick or Treat instead. It's a way better movie that's basically the same thing. They even fucking rip off some of the stories. It's just not a good time. So next up I have is American Guinea Pig Sacrifice. And it's from 2017. I gave it 1.5 stars. From my understanding, this is the only American Guinea Pig movie that doesn't really have like the Unearthed crew or like Stephen Biro. They just released it simply. They didn't have anything to do with like the production or anything like that. And this movie, it has potential to be cool. Just because it is a self-mutilation movie, which takes a lot to make well. You know what I mean? And in addition to that, it's male leading, which usually when it comes to like these like literal like torture porn movies, it's all females. However, this does star a male. However, my one thing is, and like the effects are fucking awesome. However, so it's given from the context of a man just like self-mutilating himself in his like childhood home, something about accessing a goddess that he wants to fuck, question mark. I don't really know. I kind of like, once shit happened that I wasn't into, I kind of like started like drifting. So the practical effects are fucking dope. However, like, we just have the one character, right? And it's like his like inner monologue, and he starts going on these like rants about like Trump and like Facebook and shit like that. And like this is like a pretty artsy movie, so it feels really out of pocket in the context of literally watching the entire movie, having these rants happen, and just kind of takes you out of the mood and kind of like ruins it. I feel like if it weren't for that, this would have been like a much better movie. Next I have is Stoke, The Rise and Fall of Gator from 2004. I give this 3.5 stars. This is a documentary that I went to completely blind. I recommend you do the same, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. Gator, I wasn't familiar with him when I went into this. I went into this completely blind. So I guess if you're more familiar, I mean, you might know what this movie's about, but I fucking didn't. And this movie is very suddenly not about skateboarding, to say the least. So if that sounds cool to you, definitely check it out, because it's actually pretty fucking wild and really good. It's really fun to actually see the rise and fall of Gator, you know? And it also has like Tony Hawk and like Jason Lee and like dudes like that who are around during like that era of skateboarding, which is really cool. Next I have is American Psycho from 2000. This is a fucking classic. I love this movie. I feel like I'm speaking for all of like the mentally ill girlies in the room when I say like I am equally in love with and terrified of Patrick Bateman. And unfortunately, I relate to him too much. Like with like the fucking business card scene, I'd be fucking triggered like how he is. So I understand. I really like this movie, and if you somehow haven't, you need to watch this movie. Like, I don't know where the fuck you've been if you haven't watched this, but you absolutely need to. It's like perfectly like hilarious yet scary, and just and you get to see Jared Leto die. So like, what else can you ask for, right? Next up, oh my god, I didn't realize this was the next one. I need to collect myself. So again, a drink to this movie. You guys know how in my like last Letterboxd video, how I said I watched the worst movie I'd ever seen, and that was the Dark Web Tapes. Fuck, I like totally forgot what that movie is called. Well, I found it starring Cool Duder 69. Well, I found a really good runner up. This gets my number 2 spot in the worst movies I've ever seen, and that is Found Footage of Fear. First off, it is literally called Found Footage of Fear. However, it the first like couple like 2 to 5 minutes are literally not found footage. Stars Cool Duder 69 again. And the other thing that's really strange about this to me is that it is like not done by the same director as the Dark Web Tapes. However, it's like the same movie in the sense of it's not like actually a film. It's just like literally YouTube videos compiled together, and they're calling it an anthology. That's what Found Footage of Fear is. And I mean, it is like a step up from the Dark Web Tapes, but that also means literally nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's just like, I'm sorry, I know I'm being a fucking hater right now. I know I'm a natural born hater, but like, this is just like, it's like fucking insane how people watch this. Somebody made this and was like, yeah, this is it. This is what we're fucking releasing. It's like bizarre to me how somebody can make a movie so fucking dog shit. And the thing that's really funny about it is that like, it's a found footage movie shot solely on digital cameras, like, and like iPhones, yet they add like film grain and like VHS filters. and it like doesn't make any sense. Like literally, like it'll be somebody fucking vlogging, and they put like a film grain filter on it. Like that makes any fucking sense. But yeah, it feels like literally like nobody like tried here, and like nobody spent like more than like 30 minutes on their segment, and it's just like crazy that this like existed, honestly. However, I have to give props to like the last segment. Like, was it good? No, but I feel like it was like the only people who like put in any effort like whatsoever, which I guess isn't saying much in the grand scheme of this movie. And again, I feel like you guys are probably like, celery, why the fuck do you watch those dog shit movies? Because you can see the photo here, and you're probably like, I would never click on that. But sometimes like you just need to challenge yourself, and also get some worldview as to how bad movies have the potential to be. Because I thought, uh I thought there was like a threshold on how bad a movie could be, but I'm constantly proven wrong, and that's exciting. Next time is Night of the Creeps, which I actually had never seen before. I gave this 4.5 stars. My partner was like, "You have to fucking watch this," and I was like, "Okay, I bet." And I did. I gave 4.5 stars from 1986. I highly recommend you watch this. It's basically about like these like fucking like alien like slugs that like get into people's bodies and like control them and turn them into like zombies, which like, I mean, tell me like that's not awesome. And like it kind of like has like this weird feel where it feels like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or like what's that other one, the other movie, not Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but Fast Times at Ridgemont High, like that kind of vibe. But then we have like some horror shit going on. It's really fun. And like, as you'll grow to know with me, so like I really love like movies that have two tones like that. And this one's really fun. Highly, highly, highly recommend. This is a really fucking weird one. It's Scary Movie from 1991. Not to be mistaken for the Scary Movie that we all know with like the "What's Up," like that movie. It's not that one. I give this 3.5 stars, and it's one of the strangest movies I've fucking ever seen. It feels like this movie was made and then they had their finished product and then called it a horror comedy, although that wasn't necessarily the intention or even what the product really was, but they didn't really know what to do with it. But I fucking liked it. And like, some of this movie just really like uncomfortable, not in like a scary or awkward way, just everything is like fucking off. I had a lot of fun with it. However, like, and it'll probably be a part of my yearly rotation, it just had a really anticlimactic ending, which brought the movie down quite a few points for me. But however, I had a really good time. It's basically, literally the entire movie is people waiting in line to get into a haunted house. And then they do, and like, we have like this fucking weird character who had a weird dream about the haunted house or something. And then he thinks there's gonna be a killer, so he's like uber paranoid. It's really bizarre. I recommend it if you like a weird movie. I can genuinely say I've never seen a movie that felt this way before. So if that sounds like up your alley, check it out. It's like somewhat of like a cult classic. And last but not least, I have Trick or Treat from 2007, which was #1 on my like top 10 Halloween movies video, and I give this 5 stars. I watch this every fucking year. However, this year I got to see it in the theaters, which is super exciting, and I loved like seeing it on the big screen for the first time. Is like its first run in theaters, but super duper cool. And seeing it on Halloween completely hit different. It was like my perfect way to spend Halloween, because honestly I usually don't do anything on Halloween but watch movies, because I don't like party or go out or anything like that. Like, I'm a couple beers at home and talk to you guys kind of guy. So seeing Trick or Treat on Halloween was really great, and I feel like I just love this movie. It just perfectly captures like the mysticism and like feeling of Halloween, and I just love every single thing about it. And it's always nice because this movie has like an immense attention to detail that we see, and like it's really hard to probably pick up on your first watch, but however, every watch I do, I pick up on more and more things, and with like the continuity and how the stories line up. And yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough. And if you haven't seen this movie, you've been fucking living under a rock, and I say watch it like ASAP. So yeah, that was how I spent my Halloween night. I literally fucking woke up, watch Scary Movie and then went to go see Trick or Treat at night, which I feel like feels pretty perfect. Concludes this Letterboxd roundup of September through October. We came out with a bang on Halloween, and we have watched. Okay, this is actually a pretty impressive Letterboxd roundup because I feel like not too many myth things, just a lot of like literally amazing movies or literal dog shit movies, which is really fun to talk about on either end. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment. Let me know if I have sold you on any movies in a good or bad way. And then also let me know if you have any suggestions. I'm always wanting to know what you guys want to recommend to me, just because, like I said, I watch on average 1 to 2 movies a day, and if not, technically more because I like throw stuff on, but I don't rate them on Letterboxd, so I don't think that's necessarily fair. So yeah, please let me know anything you think I should be watching that you think I may have not checked out yet, or if you just want to chat about. And if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, all my links are down below so you can see what I'm watching in real time, and along with my Instagram where I also post my Letterboxd shit. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been me, Ellie, aka Looks from the Crypt, and I am out.